I would, it's okay for us to just record in 720p. For reference here, the files that we get for these are already 500 megabytes. So
yeah, sure.
like it's already too big for most things.
No worries.
720.
Totally.
I look as good in 720 as I do in 4K. No worries.
Oh, I prefer better. Blurring.
You look better.
Yeah, even that. Yeah.
Oh, look at those blemishes. They're all gone.
Yeah,
you can't see them.
gone.
Yeah. Caspar looks like 25.
Oh, there you go. It's auto airbrushing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Welcome to the What's Your Baseline podcast, where we demystify enterprise architecture and business process management.
We're here to bring best practices and lessons learned from our years to your ears, as well as interviewing friends we met along the way on our professional journeys.
My name is Roland Volt, and I'm joined today by my co-host, JM Erlinson. Hey, JM, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Roland. Today is a really exciting day for me. I got to tell you, I have been waiting a long time to do this episode, and I'm really, really, really excited to bring on these guests that we have. I don't know, people we've had before, people we haven't had before, and most importantly, really cool topics. So my energy level is high. Roland, how are you feeling today?
I feel better because I passed the civics test yesterday, so.
Hey, finally high school diploma.
Yes, high school diploma. Yeah, that's exactly.
Hey, no shade to people getting their GED. That's fine. Listen, you do you. But for Roland, I mean, he probably should have gotten it before he got a job.
Well, some people take a little bit longer, I'm in my mid 50s, so, slow learner. So yeah, we will see. But hey, speaking of slow, and I don't know how I make a bridge now. We do have some guests here, and maybe to make it easier for me because we're lazy, we just invited one guy for the third time, and he brought his best friend. So what we have today is something new for What's Your Baseline? In all seriousness, because we want to extend our range, and what we're doing here is part one of a collaboration with an up and coming BPM podcast. And at some point in time, we negotiated hard, JM. We might be on their podcast, in the next couple of weeks. Yeah,
excitement. I know.
So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Russell and Caspar from the BPM360 Podcast on our show. Welcome, guys.
Ooh, thank you, guys. It's great to be here, and thank you for having me back again.
Yes,
and I did bring my best friend. Yeah.
No, we don't have, Caspar, we don't have friends. This is why we invite you so often,
Oh, that's the whole point.
We only have colleagues.
I'm happy to oblige. Trust me.
Yeah, here you go.
Well, we're excited. We watched the growth of BPM360. I think it's a really interesting format. I think the way you guys present is really cool. And I think you're thought leaders in your own right. So like we had you on before, Russell, you're going to join Caspar in a conversation today about something that I think is on a lot of our minds, which is what the market and a lot of our customers and clients and potential customers think BPM and EA is. And so for today's episode, we're calling it BPM and EA Misconceptions. And I think this is a big topic because oftentimes we walk into an opportunity to consult, to provide some thought leadership. And the person we're talking to already has an idea of what they're going to get. And a lot of the time, it's very wrong. That bias, that preconception of things can skew the conversation. So we're going to address a few of our favorite or least favorite misconceptions today and talk to you a little bit more about what they actually are and maybe inform you and your stakeholders today. How about that?
It sounds good.
Great.
But before we get to this, obviously, we like to give our audience a chance to get to know our guests. And I know some people already know Caspar, so I want to start with Russell. Who's one of the two hosts. Now his sweat level production goes up. Russell, can you talk a little bit about who you are and what you're doing and what your background is?
Yes, I'd love to. And thanks a lot for inviting me. I guess I only got the invite because I'm the BPM friend of Caspar's BPM friend, as they call him. So it says, do you have to bring him along? Yeah, well, you know what it's like. You got this.
I didn't know it hurt that much, Russell.
I try to live up to the standards that Caspar's put into the show. I did upfront listen to all your episodes, selected episodes, but definitely the ones with Caspar. So I know it's
that means
it's a high bar to reach. So
that means you listen to zero.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Come on. So and to join it, when you go in and introduce yourself, you're always looking for something where we're similar or something where we're different. So Roland, I'm also in my mid-50s. My name is Russell Gomersall. Actually, I was born in England, but I then after a couple of travels around the world, I did finish up in Germany. What a choice my parents took. But that's a long story. And so I've been to German school, studied chemistry in Germany. And then I slowly but surely slipped over to IT and then into consulting. Yeah? So for many years for some years, I was working at Idea Shared. I really loved actually this topic coming from chemistry. I would like to understand the world. And the way chemists do it is by actually creating models. You have an atom model and then it fulfills certain, it can answer certain questions. Yeah. But then you notice it doesn't answer all questions. So you refine the model. Yeah. So when going through the evolution of say how atoms and react with each other, you're always thinking of models, but you can't see it yourself. And I was really intrigued when going into IT to understand that to explain to people actually how they should go with their digitalization, it really helped that they understood and had a model of their business. Because looking from outside, you see a factory, you say, okay, what's happening? So to be able to really dig into how to do things better, or again, a model helps on a very macroscopic level, not on a microscopic level, but that's why I really dug into this idea of business process management as a methodology to help explain something complex, but not microscopic, like, atoms and molecules, but something macroscopic as businesses and how they work together. And so a lot of along the path of actually helping companies transform, introduce tools like ARIS at the time, it was always also about how to make the best benefit of this and incorporate this embed this in the company. And after IDS was sold to Software AG, we founded a company because we still wanted to really follow that path of consulting. That's really it been. So going out there and all these misconceptions around, why do you want to do BPM and what is it worth and isn't it this and isn't it just modeling? That's what I love about this topic today is that's what we have to do day in, day out. Yeah. So we see this bigger picture, this bigger benefit if companies dig into it. In the meantime, leaving the classical modeling methodology, looking at it more as a means to support communication, collaboration, and development in a company. I think that it's all about overcoming misconceptions. So that's why I think that's that day-to-day business, and it's great to have three other people that I hope that we don't come out of this meeting and have a complete misaligned. That I noticed that you're falling for the same misconceptions that I'm encountering. No, but that somehow we see where there are the main misconceptions and where we agree that this is something that is completely seen, completely wrong out there. And jointly we can help make the world overcome these misconceptions. And I always, in your podcast, I saw that the people also give us something privately. So I'm married, got a kid, he's 12, great age. I love mountain biking. So here I live in Germany around the Ruhrgebiet area, and there's a lot of nice hills. So it's good for good fair amount of mountain biking you could do here. I dig into that, but other than that, that's. I love binging Netflix, but that's what everybody does, doesn't it? So,
well, I think that's a great introduction for you. I wanted to turn it over in case people haven't been listening for the past many episodes and seen them along the side. Let's get a brief introduction from our friend Caspar Russell. It's a pleasure to meet you, Caspar. Tell our audience a little bit more about who you are and why you're here.
Yeah, I'll keep it really brief. I'll try to at least. So my name is Caspar. I actually born and raised in the Netherlands, but very close to the German and Belgian border. So in the southern eastern part, I've had a fascination with processes since I was quite young. But even when I went through my master's in industrial engineering, I graduated on process simulation and how consultancy could use that. And then it's been a red thread throughout my career. I spent about 20 years in the chemical manufacturing industry. I met Russell during that period. So we go back I think we have our 10 years anniversary of knowing each other this year. So that's quite that's a very nice gesture. I went to Software AG for a couple of years, about 6. Great episode in my life. I'm now doing BPM specialist work for Salonis since about 6 months. On the personal side, I'm married. I have 3 kids between 10 and 16. So it's getting considerably easier to handle that. So it's a great age as well, same as Russell says. I have a passion for basketball. I've basketballed myself for a long time. My son's playing basketball on national level. So really passionate. I try to be on the golf course once in a while, but hardly ever find time to do that. But once I get even older and I start to work less, I'll try to play golf more. That's pretty
well. Meanwhile, we would love to get started with this because I think that this is a topic of a lot of important people, and it's not like it's timely. This is an ongoing problem, but I think the acceleration of the market means that more people are being sort of thrust into confronting BPM without necessarily having all the information on it. And sure, ChatGPT can answer a couple of your questions here or there, but it's also not always right, and it's certainly not comprehensive. So let's start with the very first question. We've grouped this into a couple of sections. We'll break it up in the middle here, but let's just talk about the very first piece of the puzzle, just about the discipline itself and about architecture and BPM. The first misconception I hear is that BPM is a topic for nerds. And guys, I disagree, but I want to get your thoughts on it first. I'm going to go over to Russell. Russell, why is BPM not just a nerd only topic?
Well, isn't it?
Yeah, true, JM. Move on.
True. Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. I've been JM.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd, and it's for me. So what am I meant to say to that?
I love it. The first misconception is a real no.
Yeah.
No, seriously, I think why this comes is that traditionally a lot of the BPM I think methodology has arisen in certain departments that are, say, being located around, say, for example, quality management, and it's always been attached to a strong methodology. And as soon as you get to that level, and it's an abstract level as well. So if you're talking about software, you can open it up, you show some functions, and everybody's happy. Yeah, you can really. I can remember, when I used to sell software, I realized in demos you can hide behind the software and you do the demo. That's your scope, your space, and people can relate to it. And then all of a sudden you go that abstract level higher, and then you're talking about methods, and methodology, and you're doing this for the purpose of the better cause, as we said, but to get to people to understand, you have to think in an abstract structure, a methodology, before you then get down to the tangible bits. That's where they say, God, what are they talking about? This seems so theoretical. And it's only 2 steps later that then this method then makes sense. When you are bringing in structure into your day-to-day working, where you're decomposing your day-to-day work into elements that are, can be managed. And this is where I think that they are the people that have really developed the methods and are driving this in the companies. They are a lot of the times nerds. And the big challenge is how to then transport it into, into the organization. So I do understand why this misconception is there.
I think you're onto something, because there's a sister misconception on it that says, oh, EA is just something for IT. Nobody needs that. A spreadsheet, CMDB, whatever will do. Right. And I think besides the methodology part of it, it's also, those things are specialty tools. Who are the user group? And then the people who use those tools, they obviously need to distinguish themselves from the others. And then they build that little aura of, where we're the wise old people. We know everything, how things are wired up here and where you have your skeletons in the closet. I think it's a big danger to be in that ivory tower. And I literally have seen organizations who had fired their whole EA groups. And when we looked at the artifacts, they did good jobs. They just couldn't communicate it.
But the just to jump in here a little bit, I mean, first of all and foremost, I think that the B in BPM stands for business. So it's business process management. So it's something by the people for the people, or in that order. I think one of the biggest misconceptions in BPM is that whatever you put into a BPM platform, and I think the same doesn't apply to EA that much, but for BPM this works out. Whatever you put into always will have two purposes. There is a creation and maintenance purpose done by the experts, and there is a consumption purpose done by everybody else. And that can't be the same environment. It's very difficult for end users to let them loose in a specialized modeling environment. They simply get lost. And then they think, wow, this is just for nerds. Because making a nice model is an art, to be very honest. So even though they're nerds, they're very creative ones. But it's a business show. EA is slightly different. I think EA is run by IT very often, but I do think that the outcomes of AE are very much for the rest of the organization as well.
Caspar, aren't you cutting yourself short? Because your assumption, if I hear in between the lines, is that you say, oh, BPM is just process modeling. Which is, by all means, you should know that is not true, right? So there's that whole life cycle that we spoke about in the past, And
don't get me started.
But that's the conception. Of course, I want to.
Roland, I need to protect my friend here. Roland. So,
thank you, Russell.
I
can't do that myself.
So the point is, Roland, though. But that is exactly the conception. So when the people, say normal people, non-nerds, get in contact with BPM, then it's about somebody coming and says, hey, we have to do a model. And then somebody like Caspar saying, isn't this beautiful? This is a piece of art. And the business people are saying, this guy, what are you talking about? Wow. Yeah. Okay. Bye. If you got your input. So a beautiful model. And he, printed out, hanging on the wall. And, it's kind of like, awesome, So that's where the misconception comes from, because that's where the contact is. But the other thing Caspar said, which I think is the point, is, this real life application. So the business process management, we all agree, is to be consumed by the business and, also IT, but say the whole organization. But how much do let's say the initiatives that we see lack on exactly that point? How many times do you see they're not getting it out? They're using it. They have fantastic use cases. They're managing compliance with it. They're managing transformation with it. But really that people are saying, you have a question to my company, I will look into our process repository. I'll find the answers for everything there. Everything is connected. I know who's responsible. I know which documents there. So our, wet BPM dream coming true. Yeah. But exactly that is the issue. There's so many use cases out there where they didn't manage to transport exactly that value to the non-nerd. Yeah. And they said, can we have a modeling session? I want to make a beautiful model. And after they say, what was that? Yeah.
I want to weigh in here because I think there's something interesting to me, at least. If BPM is for nerds and we think of this as a high school, well, guess what? The nerds are kind of cheating off the jocks on the test, because the truth is, you've talked a lot about consumption, but I'm thinking about input. Because the jocks, or let's call them the rank and file of the organization, contain a ton of information that BPM people need, right? So you're actually engaging with them and you're taking their information and you're choosing to represent it and solution on it. But it's not just a pillar of BPM has all the answers and BPM knows all. No, we need to gather all and we need to broadcast all. But that means an interaction with everyone else in the rest of the organization. So I think it's a little bit more of an interactive thing than it is as a tower. And it means it's not just for nerds, it's for everybody.
It is
And
for
we can talk
everybody.
about
Absolutely.
democratizing.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
well put. Yeah.
Yeah, because ultimately, JM, if you really look at BPM, what it gives you as an organization ultimately is an unprecedented transparency and insight into the dependencies between the various parts of your organization. That's what BPM does. And the process model just happens to be the vehicle that you can use to connect everything together.
So you talk about process model, because I want to harp on this a little bit. We do see clients talk all the time. BPM is just a modeling exercise, and you're creating process documentation for some purpose, but just to catalog it, maybe for like compliance or whatever, regulatory obligations. But all it is process modeling. And I think that is such a misconception of what it means to document an enterprise, because processes are just one thing you do. So Caspar, elaborate a little bit on that for me.
Yeah. So let me give you an analogy, because
Sure.
I use this one already for years. Imagine that you want to build a house or an office building. I don't care, but let's take a house. The first thing that you do is you sit down with an architect, and he makes a sketch for you how the house might look like, including a rough floor plan.
Yeah.
Very nice. But for the contractor, that's worthless. You need something more tangible. So what the contractor does is, based on those initial sketches, they create construction drawings or construction models, and see them as the process models of your organization. And not just the process models, because they also need to draw plans for the wiring of the electricity and the plumbing and all of that stuff. And these are the different facets that you have in an organization. Now, you can use those process models, read construction drawings, to build your house. But once the house is built, you're going to be living in it. In the analogy, you're going to be running your organization. And the one thing that users of a house need, they don't look at the construction drawings. They look at the user manuals of your heating system and your oven and your stove and whatever it is. The whole point is that you can live in your house at the moment that you need to do remodeling. You want to add something. You want to make a hole in the wall to fit a window. What's the first thing a contractor asks you to dig up?
Yeah,
the construction drawings.
Yeah.
So why do you do BPM? You do BPM A to make sure that you can open up that information to end users so they can do their job, but B, to give a very fundamental platform for changes, transformations, change requests, whatever it is. Those things are helped tremendously by having a up-to-date single source of truth, which contains, as you rightfully say, JM, much more than just a process model. They contain the enrichment with applications and roles and risks and controls and inputs, outputs and standards and requirements. And we can go on for a little bit, but that's what it is. It's a digital twin of your organization. There you go. I've said it.
So Russell, I want to hone in on a part of this question for you, because it sounds to me like there's the next sort of section of our misconception is all about projects. It sounds to me like a lot of customers consider BPM and like a project that you do and then you complete, and you've done BPM. You've been a consultant for a long time and you do projects, but tell me why that's not really an accurate definition of BPM.
Yeah, I think ultimately the goal, and that's why when Caspar says BPM is not business process modeling, which you could then sometimes say I'm finished. It's the business process management. So I think in the initiatives that you set up, you need to establish a certain capability within the organization. And this is then, and as a starting point, maybe the documentation and modeling, you get to the level where you say, okay, now we need to create a general awareness of what BPM really is about, and to facilitate the discussion and the discussion between these different stakeholders that are all looking at the processes. So when you take the blueprint example, of course, people look at the blueprint and said, okay, but the guy that does the water and the guy that does the electricity and the other that does the bricklaying, they all look at a different specific part within the blueprint. So the blueprint itself, what you need to do in these initiatives, you need to actually establish an understanding of how to read the blueprint and who to reach out to say align on what you're doing. So the compliance managers come up with their risks and they say, okay, which processes are affected? And said, I need to talk to the people that are responsible for actually implementing this from the IT side. So you have in an organization, you have so many different views on processes. Yeah. And I think the whole magic around the process is that it combines all these different views into one comprehensive, consistent view. Now, again, not a project, because it's like the project to set this up is the starting point. And that's when the journey starts. And if you manage as a good initiative to actually establish the roles, establish the understanding, how to read the blueprint, who to reach out to based on the blueprint, how to further maintain and develop the blueprint for initiatives, that's when you're on the right track. But ultimately, maybe as a consultant, you go out, but you want to leave back not just a house that has been built, but you want to have like a family in there living, communicating well, functionally being able to get people in for contracting and being capable of managing their business processes. Yeah. And that's something that is ongoing and ever evolving.
And that's what we talk about a lot. Moving from a BPM project to a BPM lifestyle, where you operationalize like a center of excellence, or you build a capability within the organization which is continuous in its ability to address business challenges and to drive positive business outcomes. And with that idea, I can see our timing is getting a little long for our first section, and I think our people's brains are burning. So we're going to leave you with a brief question as we take our break. How do you see BPM in your organization? What do people sort of equate it with? And ultimately, how do you see it valued by different stakeholders within your organization and with whom you interface? We'll leave you for a moment and come back with our second section as we continue to address BPM and EA misconceptions.
I live in a basement apartment, paying too much rent. I don't go to the big screen movies, I got my phone instead. I'm finding it hard to get it going, but I know I must be going soon.
And welcome back to the second part of our very, very interesting conversation with Russell and Caspar. I like to pick up where we left before when we were talking about blueprints, because, and I hope I don't put I don't get stoned for my opinion here, but there's some effort creating all that documentation that Caspar explained in all big length, doing all that stuff. Can't I just use process mining? I'm agile. I don't want to do that documentation stuff. Nobody needs it.
Oh yeah.
I'm curious about your opinions.
Right.
Why do you force me to create all that stuff? Again, I'm agile.
Yeah.
Lowercase,
sure.
Uppercase, no case, whatever.
If you really want to get a rise out of me, then just say that you're agile. No worries there. So you put the quarter in the jukebox, I'll deliver.
You sing.
Yeah, no, I don't sing. No, I don't want to put our listeners to that. And then I guess it would hurt our own podcast as well. So let's not do that. No, on the blueprinting side, ultimately the whole issue with agile and also with mining, by the way, is that it only covers a part of the organization. Let's start with the mining. I'll come back to the agile in a second. So if you say, well, just mine everything, I would say, well, good luck to that. Mining takes a bit of time. It takes technical expertise. I'm a big fan of mining, but you typically reserve that for your top 10, 15% of the processes that have the biggest impact on your bottom line. That's where it shines. If you would need to do mining for every process in your organization to find it and discover it, I think it would be much quicker to simply do a brown paper session, to be honest, for like 70% of the processes. But again, it's a wonderful technology. The problem I have with Agile is more fundamental. I like Agile as a development methodology. No, that's not the issue here. But the issue is that you very often have a lot of quads and tribes that are working on different things, they think. And in the end, they are working on the same thing. And then when they start to make changes and they do quick deliveries because you need to get to an MVP very fast, they have no clue what the potential unintended consequences are. And in order to get that set up, you'll need blueprinting. For me, it's clear as day.
Yeah. So we always put this as in a picture where we say, the agile is like kids playing making sand castles, and they want to be agile and, build around, but you need to stop them just spraying the sand all over. Yeah. So you have to give them like a sand pit where there's clear structures that within here you can be agile, but you have to be aware that there is let's say a world around it. Yeah. And you have to then in that space, agility is fine, but it has to be in a controlled, let's say, area. And this is where I think the blueprint helps to actually say, in which area are we being agile? And what are actually the boundaries of my, let's say, process in this case? We're actually working on our system. Yeah. And what are other dependencies are there you have to cater for? So I totally agree. There is like this, this mix of concepts that can work together, but you have to clearly differentiate how best they can work together.
I can't believe that I say this, but I in all seriousness, I put on my SAFe certified hat now on. I think what you guys are talking about is the team level agility, where we pivot quickly and all those type of things. But when you look at concepts like SAFe, and some people argue it's waterfall in a different structure, but when you look at it, you have the concept of program increments, and you have regular touch points where you go and say, oh, are we still on track? And does Caspar and his team, do they go into some weird direction that might not lead to the bigger objective and all those type of things, right?
Yeah.
I think where my beef is more on the lowercase agile. It's the I don't want to document, and the Agile Manifesto actually says it. People over process and all that type of stuff, running software over documentation and these things. I think this is where my beef is, because it's a quick excuse for not doing the work. And in projects that I've worked with experienced agile folks, uppercase A, they said, no. If you need to create documentation, and that's part of your product, as it should, right? So that you know how to operate your oven in your kitchen.
Exactly.
Then this becomes an artifact, and it becomes whatever, a ticket, or however you track your products in your agile stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree, Roland. Totally agree. And I ran into an organization I talked with that had about 125 tribes up and running. And I just asked them the question, does tribe 87 know what tribe 1 is doing? And how can they figure out that they might be potentially impacting the same business process or the same application or the same artifact? And they had no answer for that. And that is, maybe then they didn't apply agile right. That might very possibly be the case, but that is one of the things that I fear the most when I hear somebody say, an organization say, we're working agile.
Yeah. And I think you're tying this to sort of this idea of a practice. And I wanted to hook into another misconception here. And I want to have you discuss this, because this is something that I've seen a lot of clients ask about or make very strong claims. For BPM and EA, that we just need to get the information on the page. It doesn't really matter how it looks. It doesn't really matter how it's structured. Our purpose is creating deliverables and then turning them in as part of our role in either a project or a program or just an ongoing initiative. So methodology, notation, that's not really important to us. It's about ideas on a sheet of paper. Talk to me about that misconception and why maybe frameworks and notations do matter.
Russell, you want to take that one first so I can get my blood pressure down a bit?
We've all dealt with this people asking these things. I don't. Yeah, I want a bottle different.
I agree.
I think when you're talking, to people that come up with these, like, I would say as experts, with these opinions, it's. I have the impression sometimes they feel themselves as artists with their expertise that are doing something for the greater good of the company.
Yeah,
and they're not really thinking about what they are doing, and these artifacts that it's not for themselves. They can read the code. They don't need a documentation. They can read their code, source code. Doesn't it all say it there? What I think the ignorance about this whole thing is that they do not look and have the empathy for other stakeholders in the organization. So the IT guy, and it could be a business guy, needs to start to communicate that the compliance guy understands it, the IT guy understands it, the senior manager understands it. And what BPM fundamentally does is tries to, I'll say it doesn't always work, but with the conventions, with the standards, tries to bridge this gap on levels of communication. So think about, you are producing this, let's say maybe test case document, or even like a documentation of a customization, not for yourself, but for the people to follow. So build up this knowledge base, and this could be on peer level, but it can, a lot of the time, it's for a different recipient. And I think a lot of this thing along this life cycle is thinking about how you do what you do in a way that is sustainable and usable by other participants in this big party. And that's what a lot of people completely neglect.
Yeah, I think, Russell, you're onto something, but there's also a point, when I look at this, most people would agree we need to produce a software that is easy to use, where you don't need to have a manual to use it. When you have your banking app, you just want to pay a bill or whatever, but you don't want to read 30 pages of documentation for it. But I think, Russell, you're on a point for the team that develops the software, right? There's a coordination effort that needs to be done, as you rightfully said so. The developers, the risk people, the business people, you need to bring it down to paper and say, this is what we're going to do on all aspects of the architecture, right? This is how we change the organization. This is how we change our apps and whatever, right? And I think that is more the point. So people need to, I think the misconception is that people think that the outcome of a blueprint is the main artifact. And that's just not true. The main artifact that you have is your running software, right? The rolled out banking app on millions of phones.
Yeah, but just very briefly to add on to that, I mean, one of the goals, I think, of BPM that it delivers is consistency, meaning that if you document like 25 or maybe 100 or 1,000 different business processes, at a certain point in time, you're going to want to make end-to-end processes out of that. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that you don't want to have is that in your first process, your granularity level of modeling is completely different. And in the second process in your end-to-end, it becomes unreadable. So it's a very selfish idea to not want to stick to a notation or a methodology, because you don't do it for you. You do it for the organization. That means that everybody should be able to read it if they need to.
I agree.
Then
so it's like so it's like a business Esperanto that you're trying to set up here. So I had a big project in Saudi Arabia. Now, that people are, in Saudi, they speak fantastic English. Yeah, but we had a big team of Germans there. And when they were writing concepts and documents, it was like the Kant-like style of German sentences that was like 10 pages long. And they're really losing the Saudis there. And they were super clever people. Yeah. But what I loved about the process models, I mean, we went through them. It's like its own grammar. Yeah. It decomposes something where somebody is super good in typing would write down in a full, here, let's describe my process. Somebody else reads it and says, oh, it's like reading code. Decomposing it into the key elements and having them structured in a manner. That's like, like taking out the component of grammar. Yeah. And it made it readable for people from Holland, from Germany, England, and the Middle East to actually go through it and get a common understanding. So it's also simplifying, decomposing the essentials. And I know it's a discipline and it's an art to make a nice model, as Caspar says, of course, yes. But ultimately, what is it we're trying to do here? And now when we think about getting people to agree upon this is the process, how many times are you talking that you're using different terms but mean the same? Yeah, using the same term but meaning something different. So getting people to really have a common understanding of what they are doing, is so important, especially in big corporations where you're talking about different country cultures, cultures on a global level, and you want to standardize the way of working. Hell, Yeah. I mean, it's even, you say, yeah, let's all talk English. Fantastic. Then it's no problem. It is a problem. Yeah. And this is that's where I think is the big power when you're talking about large organizations, different types of people across different countries, getting them to have a common understanding of how to work together. That's crazy. It's a business Esperanto effort that you're going into here. And that is the big value.
I agree. And I'd like to use this as a starting point for our next segment in here, because it's the discipline of architecture. Because in my mind, architectures are building structures. So we were talking about the individual artifact, the process diagram that we have at the bottom of the pyramid. But I think the added value is over time, you build up a structure. Right, you build up the hierarchies, you build up the end-to-ends, you build up your application landscape, you build up your org changes, your organization, and all that stuff. So you can use this for doing analysis. What happens if I pull the plug from this box here? Right, what will not work anymore, and who will yell at me over the phone? Except, of course, you pulled out the phone, but that's a different story. I think that is the thing. And when I look at it, I see misconceptions like, oh, well, I just documented something properly for my IT project, but then I'm done. I move on. All the artifacts of that project end up on SharePoint somewhere. The auto-generated 700-page Word documents with the blueprinting documentation that I'm pretty sure not even the author has read, after they ran the macros and whatnot. So that doesn't really help. So Caspar, what are your thoughts on, let's say, the bigger picture, the structural aspect of architecture versus the individual artifact?
I'll come back to what I stated earlier. There is a creation and maintenance purpose. There is a consumption purpose. And the creation and maintenance part can be done in any way that you think works best for your organization. Whether you use BPMN or EPC, I don't care. Whether you use vertical or horizontal, I don't care. As long as you document it consistently and properly, the question then becomes, how do I make it available for consumption? Because in the consumption side of things, there is no such thing as an architecture, or there is no such thing as notation. There is information that you've documented that you need to open up to a large audience as easy as possible, and preferably without any type of reference to any kind of structures whatsoever.
Yeah, Caspar, you said something earlier that I wanted to hook into, that BPM is kind of an exercise in generosity. And I think that's very cool. It's a communication tool. It is. But when you think about the other people, the consumers who are going to eventually be the ones who need this information, whether or not it's an architecture team implementing a tool, whether or not it's a practice trying to change the way of working, whether or not it's executives trying to understand how their organization fundamentally works, it's an exercise in providing them at a moment of truth the information they need to feel confident in their way forward. That's really powerful.
Maybe just one point there, because in that moment where somebody wants to consume it, you could assume that it doesn't care and it could be defragmented information. So in EPC, it's provided, it answers his question. Now, what Roland was talking about is that you want to have like the interconnections all managed in a way that you can do in-depth analysis. Mm-hmm. Maybe a topic more for nerds than for the general consumer, but it still really is something valuable. But there's one aspect for the normal consumer that I like about BPM is that you don't just pull up and say, you're in procurement, this is the job you do, this is the system you use, this is the transaction you use. But it gives you it should give you an understanding of why you're doing it. Because it shows you how you connect in this whole chain of processes, how what you do impacts the business, how what you do impacts the strategic, what you want to do, customer satisfaction, how to achieve customer satisfaction in purchasing, because I buy good products at a good price. So I can do a good price for the customer. He's happy. But this understanding of, let's say, your purpose in a company does not happen if you just tell him, what is your job? Just answer it with fragmented information on, this is what you've got to do it properly, do it now. doesn't work. And that's why I think fundamentally in having this alignment on how to work together and this bigger interconnected picture, which you can also use for analysis, but also being able to provide information of context of what you're doing. That is way bigger. That is way bigger. And that is really the art of process management, of getting these interconnections and these interdependencies into place.
Yeah, I agree. Having said that, I think there's another aspect that we haven't spoken about. And as we put the baseline in the beginning, we're all nerds here, right? When I think from an implementation aspect in the beginning, you need to update that stuff, right? How do you keep these things evergreen, right? Because if you go and you say, oh yeah, I have it documented and Caspar has the wonderful best repository in the world, the one with the pink curtains and all that type of stuff in there.
Oh, so nice.
Yeah, of course it's nice. But yeah, you do the analysis and you say, oh yeah, we need to change this as well, but that's not in scope for my project, right? So, then it gets outdated, right? So that is maybe just a food for thought on this, to do this. Or another flavor of that, which is also my favorite, is say, oh yeah, we're going to do this. And it's great that you drew the process, but hey, for example, I'm responsible for compliance and risk management. We do have our own tool for this. Right. So I just go into my Archer and do my stuff. So it's not connected.
Yeah.
Russell, what do you think about that approach? Those two things, updating and different tools.
Yeah, I love the way you said this evergreen, and I think it's like in companies like everything in the world, it's the entropy is always striving for max chaos. Yeah, so it's if you don't have certain governance and a certain mandate in place that continuously remembers you to, like I have to remember my son to tidy up his room, and he will remember for a certain time, and then it decays. I think that is one of the biggest challenges of, on the one hand, sustaining this value, and that it always needs energy. It always needs a constant input. Yeah, it's like an animal always needs, or we need to eat constantly. We need to breathe to be able to live on, or else we just decay. Yeah, and seriously, with BPM, I think it's a topic that you have to feed it. Yeah, you have to feed it every day. It's definitely a big challenge. And this is nothing that let's say the nerd in his little department can manage on his own. So only if you manage over there's a certain time that you get a constant, let's say even a shift in the company culture, that if somebody leaves the company, that there's 5 other people that will sustain this and feed the animal, the BPM animal. Yeah. So it's strive. That is the level you have to get to. And so that's, I think that's one of the main challenges around that. And there will always be people entering the company questioning the status quo. That's just like also normal thing of business life. It's like getting an infect. Yeah. Somebody comes in and says, why are you using that BPM tool? Why don't you use that BPM tool? So sometimes I think it's an organization has to become strong and immune to these sometimes this defragmentation that happens. Yes, you want to stand united. Don't let something come in and detriment this big idea that you have. But again, second big challenge happening all the time. Something that really that frustrates me completely. Yeah, how hard it is just to keep this BPM beast alive.
Yeah, and I wanted to quickly tie in with this a little bit, because we've all been sort of dancing around this idea, and I wanted to bring up this big misconception that I hear from a lot of companies, and particularly I hear it from startups, is that BPM is a discipline and an approach that is only applicable to large organizations or late stage organizations. It's not appropriate to small companies. It's not appropriate to startup organizations. And Caspar, I want to move first to you, because I know you've worked in both contexts, or across the spectrum of contexts. Why is that a misconception? Why is it not true that BPM is only good for large, late stage, late stale organizations, the ones that have been around for a long time? Tell me why that's not true.
Now, look, so the concept behind BPM can be applied to any organization. I mean, that's not the issue. Even if you're a startup, there are some parts of BPM that might be interesting for you. You might not spend as much time on modeling and documenting processes because they are much more fluid in that stage of your organization. But you would do very good to start already to point down and document, this is my strategy. This is my operating model. And then from that, I might even have a high level structure of how do I want to structure my organization when we grow. Do you see that BPM is used more within larger organizations? Because there is a certain amount of investment that you need to make it run properly. I think that is true too. I think you see it more in large organizations compared to very small ones. But I think that it's a misconception that it's only applicable to large organizations. I think if you're a small and medium enterprise, you could still benefit a lot from BPM. For sure.
And I think a lot of tools out there, of course, and the use cases are for large organizations where the complexity is large and you need tools to be able to manage that in a proper manner. The fundamentals of BPM definitely apply to small companies and evolving companies that are growing fast. Do they need all the tool sets? And this stringent convention, if there's 10 people sitting in a room, they can use a Miro board and draw out their processes and their operating models and strategize on which capabilities they need. And that would be a great exercise to actually then also, and I had this also as I was working for some media agency, and we were pitching to a bank for some additional funding so we don't go bust. And coming from a process world, I bought some, I said, this is how we operate and this is how we want to manage our operations from a process level. And they said, God, this is great. You're not just a staff doing whatever crazy stuff. You're actually thinking about how to deliver and how to grow your organization. So I think it's an exercise that is absolutely valuable for them. Yeah. But you don't need a process mining tool if you're 10 people. Yeah, that's something that'll come later.
I agree. And unfortunately, we're getting to the end of our show, but I'd like to touch one more misconception, which is near and dear to my heart. And I think it brings it together, Russell, to the last 2 points that you said. So I didn't know that we have such a smart guest in you here. It's
I know who I'm bringing to the show. Don't trust me.
Caspar's got it.
Caspar, don't worry. We didn't have those high expectations of you. It's all good.
Oh, that's good. That's why I co-host my show together with Russell.
It's our show. So having that said, and enough insults on that page here. But I think that the point is the skills that you need. Right. And Russell, you spoke about evergreen and keeping stuff evergreen. And we spoke about the complexity of the tools and the method and all those type of stuff. What I've seen as a misconception is, well, why do you make such a fuss around that BPMN stuff or that drawing tool, that implementation project? It's just a damn drawing tool. Give me the licenses and then I'm good, So what is the other one is, you need to have an advanced degree to be able to use those tools or being involved into BPM, the discipline. And I'm curious, Caspar, what are your thoughts on that? How do you see that? Obviously working for a tool vendor, which is happy, I would assume, to say you features over features over features that obviously then come with some degree of complexity.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I think this goes back to the misconception that BPM is a drawing tool, and it's about modeling. It's not. It goes deeper than that, and that's why there's a fuss about the implementation. It doesn't tell you that you need to work differently, but it does point you in a direction that you need to manage your company maybe slightly differently, and in doing so, you're going to get a lot of great benefits from it. I mean, that's just to the implementation part. Does BPM require an advanced degree? No, I don't think so. A lot of it is common sense, but you just need to familiarize yourself with the basic concepts behind BPM. And once you get those under your hat, you're good to go. You don't need an advanced degree. I mean, the only reason I have an advanced degree because I liked studying and I didn't know what I wanted to do, then became a BPM expert in the end. So, I mean, that's correlation. That's not even causality. But anyway, I mean,
that counts for all of us, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So is it?
Do you want to work? No, let's go and study.
Yeah, let's be a consultant.
School.
Yeah.
It's NA. It's the Nerds Anonymous. we
Nerds
have our
Anonymous.
weekly
yeah.
meetings in a circle and talk
Now,
about.
but Caspar, there is one aspect. That there is a certain you have to be able to think about what you're doing and abstract on that.
True.
So, and there is, you said a good model is a piece of art, well, I suppose.
Yeah.
For some people. Yeah. But there is something to it that we have sometimes people in operations that really do a fantastic job. But when it comes about sharing this knowledge, they struggle, and they could do a system training. But as soon as they have to explain the why and how does this actually, what is the bigger concept behind what they're doing? And we're talking about project managers. We're not just talking about somebody just doing procurement. And you really see a difference there when people are able to teach other people and to understand the essentials of what they're doing and what the difference is. If you don't do it, this is the consequence. If you do it this way, then it's good, because this is when the quality is there. I love this about people that are into, handicraft work, and they can explain to their apprentice, if you do it like that, you can do it like that, but then, kannst du so machen, aber dann ist es scheiße. That's what we say in German. Yeah. And they can explain to you why, you have to cut the wood in this way, or why you have to screw it with a certain tension, not too much, not too little, why you have to do this. And the same for business as well. And these are the people. And that's why when you get them and say, look, this is a tool to express and document your knowledge. Yeah. And for this, you have to decompose it. I think that's the thing. And it's not for everybody, but I think there's a lot of knowledge out there where you can provide the means to actually capture a lot of knowledge for other people.
Yeah, I love that. It may not be for everybody, but it can serve everybody in some capacity. And how your participation in it changes depends on your stage in your career, your focus in your job, the kind of interest you have. And ultimately, we want to be an inviting space. And I'm so glad we've invited everyone into our space for the past little while. We're gonna leave you with one more question and take a short break before we go on to our final thoughts and conclusions. But in the meantime, let's ask you to reflect back on what you've heard. This idea that it's more than a project, the idea that it's more than a ivory tower tool, the idea that it's more than an advanced degree, that BPM is for all. And think about how you interact with it, how your organization perceives it, and where you might have misconceptions that have permeated the way in which you interact with others. We'll leave you for a moment, come back with our final thoughts and conclusions for the episode.
And welcome back. Hey, fascinating conversation. I'm not sure if we could solve some of the misconceptions. So I'm pretty sure there's more room to talk, about all these things. But
always more room to talk.
That is true.
Yeah,
that is true.
It's been very therapeutic.
Oh, the Nerds Anonymous. Caspar, should we set up a weekly meeting?
Yeah, we
sing songs.
I think you all know Mirko Kloppenberg as well, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So he has
Nerds
this,
Anonymous.
He has this BPM Stammtische in Hamburg, which I'm pretty much sure is the local variant of Nerds Anonymous. They talk about this all the time as well. We need to unite.
Yeah, we had Mirko and Martin, who's one of the co-organizers of that on the show as well. But I think that the bigger question is, and in our seriousness, Russell, maybe you pick that up, is when you think about the skills that we spoke about just before the break, where can people learn more about the different disciplines of architecture? Because I also see not only BPM. We had a couple of guests on the show at the time of this publishing here that were talking about the business architecture and the Business Architecture Guild. And obviously we're also an EA podcast, which in my mind is more than IT architecture. So, Russell, what is your recommendation if somebody's really interested in this and is a little bit convinced about, oh yeah, these are really misconceptions that I had? Where can they learn more? What is your recommendation?
Well, Roland, everybody who asks me how they can learn more, I always, of course, recommend your podcast, so what's your baseline?
There you go.
And I'm always astonished how wide you've covered a lot of topics there. No, but seriously, I think what is good, you need to talk about a lot, and that's what you do, is get practitioners in that really live it day to day. And Caspar and I, with our podcast, that's why we took it up as well, to say we need to cover every angle, because a lot of these misconceptions are down to, say, the marketing of software vendors, people that are talking about BPM as more like just a pure modeling tool that they want to put on the market. And a big thing about this whole topic is that it's always super positive, the message. But as we've been talking now, I mean, we're talking about the anonymous, there is the practical side. We see a great value in it, but it's a journey as well. It's nothing you just do once and it's done. So, and I think to get a feeling for you're not alone, and there's a lot about these concepts on how to get them to work properly in real life. That's where the podcasts really help a lot. Yeah, because ultimately, there's a lot of websites out there, there's a lot of theories out there, there's a lot to learn about the methodologies. And I think the tools do a good job there. If you go onto the, Linux side for enterprise architecture, or you go to Signavio or ARIS and Celonis, the basic education on the theory, on the methodologies that are applied, they're quite good. And there's a lot to learn there on how it's approved. But as I said, learning from people that have really been through the journey, I think that's really the substantial way.
And that is a very nice bridge, Caspar. For all the people who make it up to this point in our conversation, the last question that they will have is, in a positive way, the last question is, well, that was all interesting. How can I reach out to those two interesting individuals? And I'm not talking about JM and I. We're boring. I'm talking about obviously Russell and Caspar. So how can people reach you if they want to have more about this?
Don't sell yourself short, man. Yeah. So there's a couple of ways. There's a couple of ways you can reach us. So first and foremost, of course, you can find Russell and myself on LinkedIn and connect there if you want.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to do it. I think that's almost the de facto standard answer nowadays. What you can also do is you can obviously subscribe to bpm360podcast.com if you want. And we also have an email address called questions@bpm360podcast.com. So if you really want to say, listen, I have a question and we would like Caspar and Russell to talk about that in their episodes, send it there and we'll be in contact about that. I think that's the first part of it. The second part now that I have the mic for a second, I would indeed like to invite both of you, JM and Roland, to be a guest on our show as well, because I think we have still a lot to talk about. Nerds Anonymous is not done yet. So we need to continue this. So I hope you say yes. That would make it interesting. And then we'll try to lead the conversation this time.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Caspar. And I think we heartily agree.
Oh, there you go.
And here's the thing. Just like we said, BPM is in part an exercise in generosity. I want to say thank you so much for being generous yourselves, contributing the wonderful knowledge you have to our community out there. And a thank you to our community for coming along with us on this ride. Now, if you want to hear a little bit more about these guys and what they're doing and a little bit more of the notes from this particular show, you can go to whatsyourbaseline.com/episode 76 to find more about this, and also to see if we can schedule a date for us to appear on the BPM360 podcast. Well, it's been a lot of fun, and we are looking forward to even more fun in subsequent episodes. But until then, I've been JM Erlandson.
I've been Caspar Jans.
I've been Russell.
And my name is Roland Voigt.
And we will see you in the next one.